Welcome to Owl Basket Hangout. I'm Gerolf and this is Vandil. And today we're going to be talking about Bare Knuckles.
Yes, a game we played. Does anyone know Bare Knuckles?
Yes. So, we should take them out.
Dum, dun, dun, dum.
Yes. So, it's actually Streets of Rage 4. Also known as Bea Nakurusu 4 in Japan. I don't actually know if that's how they say it, but
That's a
probably
fair
something
guess.
like that. Bea Nakurusu. I don't know if it's for or she or yon. But I think Japanese use when they pronounce like numbers in games. I think they use the English pronunciation. It's like Dragon Quest 4, Dragon Quest 3, and so on. So yeah, it's a beat 'em up, and it's been I think during the last 5 or so years, there's been, I wouldn't say a renaissance of beat 'em ups, but I think Double Dragon 4 was probably the first one that sort of came out, and it wasn't very good. But that sort of, during and after that, we've been getting more and more of like old beat 'em up series. There's been like a River City Underground and River City Girls, and now River City Girls 2 is coming out. And then there was the Street of Rage 4. I don't remember if there's been anything else, but apparently the Double Dragon 4 wasn't very good. It was pretty bad. I don't know how, but apparently it was pretty much a nostalgia cash grab. And I'm glad to say that none of these other games that I mentioned, they've been much better. And especially I want to say that in case of Street of Rage 4, because it's when you look at the graphical style, if you see it for the first time, it may sort of remind you of that, 90s or 2000 era Flash games. I guess it's 2000 or 2020 10 era Flash games, and you may think that okay, is this done with bad graphics? But when you actually look at the game a bit more, it's very well animated. It's not like a Flash game animation. It's very well hand animated.
And I really felt I got the feelings of some European style of animation.
Yeah.
Maybe even French animation style.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. So like French animation.
And it's really nice.
Yeah.
They really put a lot of effort in the animations and effects, and it all blends very well together.
Yeah.
Looks nice.
You can also unlock and play some old pixelated characters in the game, and those do look a bit strange, but they're just basically there for fan service. You don't actually have to use them. But yeah, that was sort of interesting.
So yeah, you have. Did you have 4 characters at the beginning?
Yeah, so there's 4 characters in the beginning.
Yeah.
And you can unlock one more, and then you can unlock a bunch of pixelated retro characters from the previous games. So that was kind of interesting. Immediately there's one like a gripe I want to mention with this game, because it feels like a very good game, but it's been really long time since I played Street of Rage 3, which is the last game, and I think it came out on Mega Drive, which was very long ago, like 20 years ago, maybe even more. So I don't really know how the Street of Rage games, what kind of mechanics those old games had, but it feels like every single beat 'em up has their own sort of twist in that. What do you do in the sense of defense and offense, and how you play the game to make sure that you don't, or you lose as little health as possible, or you don't even lose health at all. And I remember, like, because it was a really big turning point when I was young and I was playing Final Fight 1 on the Super Nintendo, and I realized that you can sort of, there's no blocking in that game either. So the way you basically navigate the stages in that game is that you hit the enemy a few times and then you press the D-pad to the other direction and your character grabs the enemy and throws them. And that throwing is sort of like it's something that makes you invincible while you're throwing, and it also like any enemy that tries to approach you while you're throwing somebody, they also get caught up in the throwing and they also take damage. So if you just utilize that and walking around effectively, then you can play the game through pretty easily without
Ever taking damage?
yeah,
Okay.
or you maybe take like a little bit of damage, but because you're racking up so many points, you're racking up more lives. And so the game, that's how you basically play the game and make it through it. But so back to the gripe I had with this game, so all beat 'em ups have this sort of play style that allows you to do really well with them. Scott Pilgrim versus the World had like a blocking system as well, and in some games it's like you need to press the block button at the exact moment so your character does something like a parry or a riposte or something. But in this game I couldn't really figure out like what you can do to achieve that experience. Like there's no blocking button. There is like a defensive special attack.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that you're supposed to use that, but it never really felt natural to me or something that I could have wrapped my head around. In the end, that was sort of the problem I really had this game. So there wasn't ever really that point when it felt like I'm on top of all the situations. And
We did
Yeah.
figure out some of the enemies and how to beat them more easily, but later on there were a lot of enemies we just couldn't for the life of us figure out what we should do, or if it was something that just needed a lot of practice and
Yeah.
we didn't have that much patience to start practicing them.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's not just that, you know, we would be not just that the game would be hard or we wouldn't be very good, but just the fact that with a lot of it feels like you have a tool set and it's not quite enough, or it's something that we just couldn't figure out. So the earlier stages we managed to do really well. We didn't really take any damage in those stages because we started knowing where the enemies appear, and you can just, you know, walk to the spot where the enemy will jump into the stage and you can grab them and then you can change stuff and everything works very easily. But at the later stages there's some enemies that can this is one other, I mentioned that there's a toolbox that you have, and it feels like you're sort of nerfed as a playable character in this game, in that, you know, you can move up and down on the stage and left or right, but you can only jump straight up or forward and backward. You can't jump like to the front or to the back. But
Yeah.
some enemies, or I guess
Yeah.
many enemies, can do that. So in many cases it feels like you're not safe in many places. And the other thing is that there's a lot of enemies that have moves where you think that, okay, if I try to approach them from the forward, they can just hit you from far away. If I try to jump forward, they can hit you upwards. And if I try to, you know, move from any of the sides, go to the front or the back, then they can just, you know, jump towards there and attack
diagonally
you.
straight at
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
So
yeah, I've noticed that too.
yeah, so it just felt like we didn't really understand what to do in those situations. And there's a lot of many other games where that's been a lot more like self-explanatory, that you
Yeah.
can just block or you can just run, or you can run and jump. And that's other thing. There's only one character in this game that can run. All the other characters can only walk at a normal pace, and that's why jumping forward is somewhat slow as well.
That's a fair point, because we have played a couple of, or a few beat 'em up games, and I remember distinctly that we always start having a lot of fun at the end because we start figuring out the enemies and their weaknesses, and it's kind of very fun at the end, especially River City Girls was a very nice experience, but this game we never got that, at least I don't feel.
Yeah.
In the first stages where the enemies are more easier, they have easier mechanics or ways they play, so it was more fun at the beginning, but later stages it starts to become overwhelming and we figure it out. The River City Ransom games also, they are very open worldish. You could go backtracking as much as you want, but this game is very linear, that you always progress forward, so maybe that has something to do with it as well, that we didn't get to experience the stages as many times, so maybe we also didn't get easily a lot of practice or naturally get a lot of practice because we had to go someplace else and start finding thing X from somewhere else, start exploring the areas, but that doesn't explain it all, just throwing this point out there that maybe that's one of the reasons.
So basically this is like all the old beat 'em up games. Well, I'd like to say all the old, but I'm not a beat 'em up expert, so I don't actually know about but all the old beat 'em up games that I used to play used to be very linear. And so this is one of those games, so you have stages that you go through, and you go through them in a linear order, and once you've played the game through once or so, you can of course choose the stages. And that's what we did quite a few times. We tried to get get a better high score on those stages, so that we could unlock the retro characters and so on.
Unlocks are very powerful for us because that makes us play the game as long as there's things to collect. And that's maybe one of the sticking points to me, that there wasn't that much to collect in the end. And all of them were retro characters that were neat to unlock, but I didn't have any desire to play as them. Only just to play with them a little bit, just to see how it works and laugh at it, but then you just go back to your preferred character.
I mean, of course, if you're a fan of the series, then it has some more meaning,
but this game really highlights the types of gamers we are, that we really love to collect stuff. And if there isn't any reason to play, then even though the game might be very good, but if there isn't something to achieve, then at least I drop my interest pretty quickly. That's, someone would say it's a very unfortunate trait, but people are different, and that's my trait. Wanting the game to give me something to achieve, something very meaningful, even though it's just some tokens or some collective stuff or stuff to collect into the gallery or something like that. I really hate those silhouette pictures in the gallery, and I really want to fill them up with the stuff they are supposed to be.
And so we did play through the stages quite a few times, and we did try to figure out some of the strategies for some of the harder enemies, and I guess this is all sounding like we never finished the game. We did, of course, we got to the end of the game. I don't specifically remember what difficulty settings we finished the game with. On normal at least, but I don't remember for sure if we did hard as well.
We tried some stages on hard level.
I almost think that we played through the game on hard as well.
And that's one thing's very positive, because we beat it in normal and we could beat it in hard, at least to some point even, or to the end. I don't remember anymore, but there was that satisfaction at least that we got better somehow with it. But I already mentioned the collectibles, but one really, the achievement can also be your subjective one, that you really want to figure this game out. And some games do that really well, that I really just want to play it over and over. So Yeah, there's also that part of me that really loves a very good game. Streets of Rage 4, it was lacking something. It comes down to what you just spoke about. About there's something being wrong about it, about the gameplays. You really wish there was this one additional button for blocking or something to do. It felt like you were, like you said, nerfed in this game somehow.
Yeah. And I
It's
imagine
very weird.
yeah, I imagine that it has something to do with the special moves and the defensive special moves, but we just couldn't figure it out, and that feels really like unsatisfying that we couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, maybe it's also because we are very used to having a block that there's a game. Maybe the games from 1 to 3 had similar types of.
Probably, yeah. I'd like to imagine that if we'd played the original games and if we were familiar with them, then it would have been better, because I haven't done actual research about this, but I imagine that they tried to be pretty faithful with this series. So that's why they didn't add any block buttons, or they didn't try to replicate Final Fight or any other beat 'em up games or series.
So it might be just us not being able to wrap our heads around that a special move is actually your block in a sense. That's something I really have never encountered in any games. So I understand it might be just us not. It's not very intuitive.
Yeah, especially because, you know, like in all beat 'em ups that I know of, special attacks, they always drain a part of your health away. And that's what happens in this game too. So that's why it's never felt like natural to me to use those special attacks in any of these games, or at least not all that much. And in this case, if that's the way you're supposed to, you know, protect yourself from enemy attacks and so on, then it does feel pretty strange. So with Cherry, the girl character, she's the only one who can run, and that makes her really agile compared to the other characters. So I felt she was probably the one that felt the most natural, because she plays much more like every other character in every other beat 'em up that I've played in recent years. Because she can cover long distances pretty quickly, and like attack enemies from the air very easily. And actually, you know, when the enemy is attacking you, or you're sort of in a spot where you know that the other characters, they can't go to the enemy fast enough to stop them from attacking, and you also can't walk away from the enemies fast enough to get away from their attacks, then Cherry is the only character who can sort of do that, because she can either run away or run to the enemy and attack them. That was one of the things. And yeah, of course, there's this whole system with the special attacks that you don't lose permanent health, you only lose like temporary health when you use a special attack. Like there's, I don't remember the character's name, but this big bulky brute who has these robot arms, and he can use the robot arm to grab an enemy from like a longer distance, and you can sort of like grab the enemy, and now that was your special attack, so you temporarily lost health, but then you can attack the enemy and throw them, and you get most of that health back. And if you don't take any damage straight after that, then you get the rest of the health back. So that's sort of nice, but it still didn't feel like I understood what to do in most of the K situations to make it through alive and not lose any health.
Yeah. Then also the hit streak is very big part of this game, or at least getting the high score in this game. And in a co-op mode, it's a bit more satisfying when you can kind of make sure that both of you are hitting enemies, or at least one of you is hitting an enemy when the other one is down, so you can try to strategize a good hit streak for your team for the end of the stage.
Yeah.
So that was pretty nice, but there was also the problem of enemies jumping diagonally at you and always breaking the streak.
Yeah.
I can understand it was going to be very satisfying if we just put 200 more hours into this game and figure it out inside out.
Yeah, and watched YouTube videos about other players showing us how to do it. But of course, like in the end, like we didn't feel like putting 200 hours into the game, so
yeah, and it's not that long game at all. You can play it through in one sitting and have many sittings of playing it through.
yeah. And after that, it's just about you challenging the game on higher difficulties and learning the intricacies of the game.
Yeah, I have to say the final boss is pretty much something you just can brute force through. At least I remember the end or the last form of the boss has at least 3 hit boxes. You can choose which one to hit and just stay in the corner and hit, and it comes down pretty easily. So it's not something very challenging, or wasn't as challenging as you would expect from a final boss.
Yeah, I think there was something strange with that last time. I don't really remember what it was, but because I think, of course, there's like multiple hitboxes that you can hit, but some of them are also something that can hit you back. So I don't really remember what happened that I managed to like manage that whole fight so well at the end. But
I have this memory of them having some kind of blind spot or some spot where you could just stay in and be relatively safe.
Yeah.
At least if you're playing as 2 characters and one of us can stay in there and the other one can just distract the enemy or something like that. But it's been such a long time that I don't remember the specifics of the fight, but I remember it was the first times where, of course, we died a lot the first times, but when you figure it out, maybe that's because maybe we did clear it on a hard mode, and that's what stuck into my head. That was it this easy? It was surprisingly easy to beat. I was very scared of the hard mode final boss, and it came down very easily in the end.
Yeah. So the game is for 1 to 4 players. So all the time we played co-op or 2-player game. I think if I understood correctly, it seems that the enemies are a bit stronger when you're playing on a co-op game, because I think there were parts where we didn't do all that well and one of us died, and suddenly the enemies were a lot easier at that point. So that's sort of, I guess, nice thing to know about the system. But yeah, it was pretty nice, I think, playing on 2-player game. I think you can, if I remember correctly, you can turn friendly fire on or off. But there's still some stuff, like if you throw an enemy, it can still hit a friend. Or
something like that,
Yeah, or at least like with items, or there is some scenarios that caused us to hit each other, I think. And I hope I'm not just confusing this with Scott Pilgrim or another game, because that might also be it.
Yeah, but overall we really enjoyed this game, and it's sometimes very nice to have this little game you can play through pretty easily and have fun with it and enjoy the graphics, and this game really hit that spot for me, at least.
And as we mentioned, it looks really nice. So a lot of these beat 'em up games have gone the retro look.
With pixelated
graphics.
With
pixelated graphics. And this one decided to do something different, but something that looks really good.
Yeah, I think this is the best way to approach a retro remake of a game, because I want to think that if the game makers had better graphics, they would have put them in the original games also. They put as much graphics as they could with their technology versus the cost
Yeah.
would be to make these arcade machines. So I really liked the modern approach of thinking more like if I made this game now, how I would make it, and it's usually the old these beat 'em up games. They are animated series. You play through an animated series that's pretty very pixelated, and you just upscale them in a sense into a modern resolution animation graphics, and I really like that.
Yeah. My only fear there basically is that I'm pretty sure that they've spent a lot of time and effort into making this game look really good. And it's something that you really have to double down on it if you're going through this route and to really make sure that it doesn't look like just that, Flash type of.
But on the one hand, you get the experience of making this game, and they can always build upon it for the next project they have.
Yeah.
Well, this is something that always occurs when we play these kinds of beat 'em up games, because the first this kind of game for me was Super Smash Bros. Melee, and that's been that game's control scheme has been drilled into my brain, and I always, whatever the beat 'em up or fighting game is, I always wish it had the Smash Brothers,
the control scheme. Yeah.
Because I just feel that's the perfect style of making a fighting game.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And there always needs to be different kinds of games for different people. But since you mentioned that every beat 'em up game during the old era had this spin, maybe that also was kind of a downfall for some games, because they always had to think about, now we are gonna make a beat 'em up, but it has to be nothing like all the games that came before it. Maybe it's been a bit of a curse for this genre in the old days, when people were just, there needs to be that one gimmick or feature that makes it stand out in the gameplay.
Or more like it needs to be like every other beat 'em up, except it needs to have this one thing that separates it from all those things. And if some other beat 'em up already sort of mastered or perfected some formula, then of course your spin isn't going to be as good, probably. Of course, I remember a lot of makers tried all sort of different things. Like there was this beat 'em up about King Arthur's knights and games like that. So they were all sort of interesting beat 'em ups at some point in time. But yeah, I can see why they sort of dropped off, because they are very, I think, like arcade style games. And more in that, I think if you think about arcade style games, I think like shoot 'em ups and beat 'em ups are one of the two that come to my mind. And the difference between those is that shoot 'em ups are really easy to make, because you have to make just this small flying ship and small flying enemy thingies, as opposed to beat 'em ups where you usually use these big sprites and there's a lot more work. But it's the same experience in that the game is supposed to be hard, and you're supposed to be putting in those quarters to make it through the game. And I guess that's a big reason why they died off at some point.
Yeah. This game didn't have any kind of setting to make it infinite lives or something, because if you died certain times, or was it 3 times, you are out of the game, and then the last player has to play them for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's pretty bad. I don't think modern games should force you to play or let you game a co-op game and then force your friends to fall off, and then the other players are just, okay, now we are just sitting here and watching you play. At least I really think there needs to be a setting. If as long as one of the players is alive, you had some way of bringing them back, either by clearing the stage and in the next stage they would come back, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't think this game had that.
You start every stage with X amount of lives, and the amount of life depends on what difficulty you're playing the stage with. So if you're playing the very, very hardest mode, I can't remember what it was called, but I think that only starts you with 0 lives, or maybe with 1 life. And the easiest setting starts you with plenty of lives, like 3 to 5. But yeah, I can't, because there's something that's a little bit muddy with my memories in this game, that, because later I was looking at this, or later in the game, the way we were playing the game, it wasn't sort of a story mode, it was this stage selection mode that we were using, so you could always select any stage you want and just play that stage.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's, of course, if you play the game that way, then you definitely are going to start every stage with a certain amount of lives.
Yeah, I still think there needs to be a setting for you to do some work, or let the player do something to try to resurrect their friend. Because that's one part of very satisfying gameplay, that you died, and then the single player left to fend off for themselves has to do something, and yes, I got you up. It misses one of the very important things, that the game can make you experience some kind of loss, and then the huge sense of relief that
comeback mechanic, basically. Yeah, I mean, Scott Pilgrim versus the World had this, that you can walk to your friend and you can sort of punch them until they wake up from their slumber. And I think in Final Fight series, I think it's easier to beat the enemies up for long enough that you get an extra life. So that's another way. So you get an extra life, and now your friend can sort of take that life from you and hop back into the game. So this game, I'm pretty sure that it was pretty hard to get like extra lives in this game. You would usually get maybe 1 every stage. But once again, it may just come with the fact that we weren't that good at the game. If you're really, really good, then you can rack up the lives by keeping up, basically never taking any damage from the enemies, and keeping your hit streak up, and so on. We didn't manage that, so it felt like it was a lot harder to get those.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with games like that, but I always, if you are gonna make remakes or sequels to old games, you could think about putting some quality of life settings in there, so that you'll get probably a lot more people to want to pick this game up because of those quality of life settings.
Yeah.
But that's you gotta choose your audience, and they chose not to, and it really felt like kind of a very small project for them, that there's nothing extra, and the collectibles are pretty just a few characters, and that's it. So it felt a little bit of bare bones.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way. What they had in this game, they perfected it as much as possible, including the graphics and gameplay, being as faithful to Streets of Rage style of gameplay, but there wasn't that anything extra.
Yeah.
Besides the DLC that put in a couple of more characters in the game, but we really didn't feel like it deserved, or we wanted to have a DLC.
Yeah. Another positive thing I had with the game is that there's this sort of practice mode with all the characters. I don't think it was. I do wish it was a little bit more maybe like robust, but it does teach you like the basics of every character. Basically, once again, the only problem I had with those basics is that some of them were stuff that we're really sort of hard to use. I think with the main character, like one of the things it tries to teach you is that you can sort of throw enemies into the wall and you can punch them again, and to sort of keep your flow so you can juggle enemies between the wall for a couple of hits. But the problem there was that it's not as natural as in some games where you can very easily sort of throw an enemy into a wall and it takes like a whole second for the enemy to come back to you or something. In this game you have to be very precise with when you're using a move to attack that enemy that's sort of, what's the word, like ricocheting from the wall. You have to be really precise with that or you just don't hit that enemy. So it has sort of this, if you don't like Street Fighter 4 or 5 because you have this like 1 to 5 frames of time that you need to do stuff, then you're not going to like the tiny amount of time you have in this little game to do stuff like that. So those were our thoughts on Streets of Rage 4. I've been Geralf, and this has been Vandil with Owl Basket. And thanks you for watching.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.